telling my husband he can leave me and our newborn and it wouldn't impact our lives. My husband, 32, and I, 29F, have been disagreeing lately about childcare for when I need to return to work full-time. He wants to rely on his parents and my mom to watch our son, 3 months, and I want to enroll him in an infant program at a daycare. I had just started to get a little bit of a rhythm with our newborn. Some days were smoother than others, but it still felt like every moment I had was either spent feeding, changing, rocking, or trying to sneak in a quick shower or 2 spoonfuls of oatmeal. Being home with my baby was a kind of love I never knew existed, but it was also exhausting. Every little decision now seemed to carry the weight of forever. We had been talking about the return to work ever since my maternity leave started. At first, it was casual, just ideas tossed around late at night between diaper changes and bottle prep. But lately, it had turned into something much heavier. Something tense. My husband, Adam, believed the obvious answer was family. Why pay strangers to raise our son when we have people who love him? He had asked more than once. He would gesture toward his phone or mention his mother's name like it was the solution to everything. But every time he said it, my chest tightened. I had my reasons. Deep ones. I do not want his parents to watch our son for many reasons. But the biggest being his parents are not capable of watching a newborn for 9 hours, and the fact that they refuse to follow the updated safety guidelines for prevention of SIDS. It was not just about preferences. It was about safety. The first time I tried to explain the new sleep guidelines to his mother, how the baby should only sleep on his back, with no blankets or bumpers, she laughed like I had told a joke. Every time I tell them updated information different from how they did it 30 years ago, I get comments like, my kids would be dead 100 times over nowadays with what I did. Or, you're letting these guidelines drive you crazy, because I do not want my son to suffocate due to a blanket or bumpers being in on his bassinet. There was always a joke. Always a comment to brush me off, like I was paranoid or silly for caring. But it was not paranoia. It was motherhood. The weight of protecting this tiny life was on my shoulders every single second, and this was not the first time they had crossed a line. To put it in perspective, my in-laws have issues with their other DIL as well, due to how they treat people around them. I could go on about the issues the in-laws and I have had in the past, but I do not want this post to be so long. Let us just say his parents purposely cross boundaries at the expense of others to get what they want. Even when we had tried to set gentle limits in the past, they found ways to ignore them. Showing up unannounced, offering help that created more mess, making me feel like I was not doing enough, even when I was doing everything. So I had put my foot down. I wanted our son in a licensed daycare, one with trained staff, structure, and experience. That night, as I stood in the kitchen preparing our son's bath, I felt the weight of that decision pressing against my back. The warm water flowed from the faucet into the small tub I had placed, carefully on the counter. I tested the temperature with my wrist, just like I had learned. Our son was tucked securely against me in the baby wrap, his soft breathing rising and falling like the tiniest tide. Anyways, the argument between my husband and I got very heated the other night as I was preparing my son's bath on the kitchen counter. As I was finished filling it with water, my husband was so upset with our disagreement that he took the bath and flipped it over. I gasped as the tub slipped from his hands and splashed water everywhere. It drenched the floor, soaked the documents I had laid out on the table, insurance forms, my return to work schedule, a letter from my OB, and ran into the seams between the floorboards. I stared in stunned silence, my breath catching in my throat, resulting in water being all over our kitchen and dining room hardwood floors and table. I told him to get the F out of the house and to not come near me or our son. I was baby-wearing him at the time. I did not yell. I did not cry. My voice came out hard and cold. Get out. Right now. I turned away from him, wrapping my arms tighter around our baby. I could feel his little head shift beneath the wrap, his body wiggling. At the sudden tension around him, Adam took a step forward, reaching out, but I recoiled. He kept trying to come near me to the point I left through the back door with my son, and tried to get in my car to drive away, but my husband stood behind my car, so I could not leave, so I just walked away from the house instead so I could feel safe with our son. I tried to start the car, but he moved behind it, arms crossed like a wall. I froze. The night air was sharp on my cheeks. Without a word, I climbed out, clutched my baby to my chest, and started walking. Away from our house, away from him, into the quiet of the neighborhood, where the only sound was the whisper of wind and the distant hum of a streetlight. Each step was shaky but necessary. I needed space. I needed to breathe. Eventually, I came back because I had to. My baby was hungry. And no matter how upset or scared I was, he needed me more than ever. Eventually, I needed to come back in order to feed our son a bottle. My husband was attempting to clean up the gallons of water he spilled on the floor and all over the documents I had on the table. Floors, basement ceiling, and documents ended up damaged. He was kneeling on the floor, his back to me, scrubbing with a towel. The room still smelled like bath soap and wet wood. I stood there quietly, watching him try to undo what could not be undone. He said he would finish cleaning up and then leave the house. He left around midnight and did not come back until 8 p.m. the next day. The silence of his absence echoed through the house. Even though it was peaceful, I could still feel the anger sitting in the corners of every room, and this was not the first time. Sadly, this is not the first time my husband has acted out of anger. While I was pregnant, he punched a hole in our hallway, and then grabbed me, resulting in my shirt being ripped. He also has knocked my possessions off countertops, resulting in things I cannot replace being broken. He always apologizes and says he will do better, but I no longer have hope for him. Each incident had chipped away at something inside me. A vase here, a framed photo there. My trust, my safety, my ability to believe the words, "I will do better." And now with our baby here, I could no longer ignore the truth that had been creeping in for months. The next day, the house was quiet again, but it was not peaceful. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, my baby in one arm and a towel in the other, drying what my husband had left behind. The water had seeped into the cracks in the hardwood. It had soaked into the carpet near the dining area. I was not sure how bad the damage was yet, but the silence was louder than the mess. Adam did not come home that night. He had left around midnight and did not return until nearly 8 p.m. the following evening. 20 hours with no word, no message, no phone call, just gone. And strangely, it did not feel shocking. It felt familiar. I fed the baby, sang him lullabies, cleaned the dishes, and made a simple meal with one hand while holding him with the other. The rhythm of care never stopped. It had become my life. When Adam walked through the door that evening, he looked tired. His hair was messy and his eyes were red. I did not ask where he had been. I did not need to know. Instead, we sat down. Again, the way people do when they have to talk about the future, whether they want to or not. We picked up the thread of our argument, though the room was still heavy from the night before. I asked again about daycare. He insisted his parents would help. They want to be part of his life, he said. This is what family is for. But it is not just about wanting, I replied. It is about being able. I need to know he is safe. I need consistency. I cannot be worrying every day about what he is sleeping with or what rules are being ignored. He looked at me like he did not understand. Or maybe he did understand and just did not agree. He leaned back and crossed his arms, and for a moment, there was silence between us. Then, out of nowhere, he changed the subject. "What about another baby?" he asked. I blinked. "What?" Eventually. "Do you still want more kids?" he asked, his tone guarded. I hesitated. My body was still healing. My mind was still racing every night with thoughts of our son's birth. It had not been easy. Labor had been long, recovery even longer, and emotionally I still felt fragile. "I do not know," I said softly. "It was a hard birth. I need time." His expression darkened instantly. "So what? Our son is going to be an only child? He snapped. You do not get to just decide that. I did not say never, I replied. I said I am not ready to think about it right now. Our baby is only 3 months old. Can we focus on him first? That is when he said it. Words that hung in the air like a storm. Then maybe I will find someone else to have another baby with. For a second, I thought I misheard him. But I had not. My chest went still. My thoughts froze. Our son will not be an only child, he added, like it was some kind of declaration. I looked at him, not in anger, but in disbelief. And then, something in me went quiet. Not cold, just still. Okay, I said. Then file the paperwork. His eyebrows twitched. What? File the paperwork, I repeated, my voice flat. Go ahead, if that is what you want. He was not expecting that. Maybe he thought I would plead. Maybe he thought I would argue or cry. But I did not have any energy left for that. I had given everything to this home, to this baby, to trying to hold us together. It would not make a difference if you were here or not, I told him. You left for almost 24 hours and I managed. I can keep managing. I meant it. In that moment, I truly believed it. Do I want our son to have divorced parents? No, I do not. But I also do not want him to grow up around a father who acts out of anger and aggression. This life, the one I pictured when I got married, was slowly falling apart. Not because of one moment or one fight, but because of a pattern. A pattern of shouting, of breaking things, of walking away when things got hard. A pattern I had tried to excuse, to fix, to hope my way through. And now, as I looked at our son, sleeping peacefully in his bassinet, I knew I had a choice to make. Not just for me, but for him. I thought about the last few months. The missed promises. The broken objects. The way I often felt like I was parenting two people, my child and my husband. I just feel like I have been through enough with him, and for him to now threaten divorce over childcare and potentially not having another baby is absurd in my mind. It was not just one argument. It was everything that came before it, too. The cracks in the walls, the things he knocked over in anger, the way he said sorry with no changes that followed. I know during our arguments I can say nasty things, but I never threatened divorce. Even in the heat of the moment, I never used that word. Because to me, marriage was supposed to mean something deeper. Something worth protecting. Even in hard times. But it felt like he used it like a weapon. A warning. A way to hurt me when I was already hurting. Now, days later, we were still trying to talk. Still circling the same disagreement. Now, a few days later, we are trying to continue talking about childcare, but my trust for him and his parents is almost non-existent due to his actions and words. And maybe that was the biggest crack of all. Once, trust breaks. How do you put it back together? How do you hand your child over to someone, or to people, when your instincts are screaming not to? I found myself questioning everything, wondering if I was being unfair, if I was overreacting, if I was the one causing the problem. I am starting to feel like I am the a-hole because I said that him leaving would not make a difference. Like deep down, I do not want him to leave. Because deep down, I did want him to stay. I wanted him to be the father our son deserved. I wanted him to be kind and patient and steady. I wanted the man I once believed he was to return. But then I think about how mid-typing this I had to stop to go take out the garbage. It is 5 a.m. before collection, even though he said he did it before he went to bed. And it was always like, that. I ended up doing everything. Not just the baby things, but the daily things. The details that kept our home running. The errands, the planning, the cleaning, even at dawn. I just sometimes think he purposely is incompetent, so I just do everything. I did not know if it was intentional, but it happened enough to feel like a pattern, And the weight of it, of doing it all alone while being told I was not doing enough, was crushing. He says I will not have to coordinate with our parents on who is watching our son when during the week, and he would do it. But I know that will not happen, and I will have to end up doing it. That is what scared me. More promises, more hoping, more waiting to be let down. I just do not need the extra stress, and would rather have something consistent. That is all I wanted. Stability, safety, a plan that did not change every week. A place where our baby could grow and I could breathe. I just do not know what to do or if I am an a-hole for not wanting this life as it is right now for our son. I loved my son with everything I had. And because of that, I knew I had to make a choice, not just for what I wanted, but for what he needed. I just was not sure yet what that choice would be. It was just past 6 a.m., and the soft light from the kitchen window was beginning to stretch across the floor. My son was still asleep in his bassinet beside the couch, his tiny fists curled near his cheeks. His breathing was slow, peaceful. I sat in silence, sipping lukewarm tea and watching him, wondering how someone so small could make life feel so heavy and so full at the same time. Adam was still asleep in the bedroom. He had come home late the previous night after another long walk to clear his head. That was his phrase for leaving during hard conversations. And I was learning that when he said he needed space, it often meant I would be left with the weight of whatever we had just talked about. We had not spoken much since that night, the night he threatened divorce over the possibility of not having more children. That moment played on a loop in my mind, repeating quietly in the background no matter what I was doing. Then maybe I will find someone else to have another baby with. I could not forget those words, no matter how much I tried. They clung to me even when I rocked our baby to sleep, even when I wiped the counters or sorted the laundry. They echoed in the way Adam looked at me now, with distance, with disappointment, maybe even with blame. I thought marriage was supposed to mean we faced things together. But lately, I felt like I was standing alone on one side of a wall, knocking, gently, hoping someone would listen. That morning, while my husband slept, I did the usual. I cleaned up after the night feeds. I refolded the laundry I had not finished the day before. I reheated my tea again. It was strange how even in the middle of emotional chaos, daily life continued like nothing had changed. Diapers still needed changing. Bottles still needed washing. Trash still needed to be taken out. As I tiptoed around the kitchen, I could not stop thinking about how different everything felt from when we first found out we were pregnant. Back then, we were both so excited. Adam had even bought a tiny blue hat the day after the ultrasound, even before we knew if it was a boy or girl. He talked about teaching our child to ride a bike, to swim, to build things with their hands. He told me I was going to be a great mom. I had held on to that version of him through all the hard moments. I kept waiting for that man to come back, the one who smiled at my growing belly, who whispered dreams into the quiet of our bedroom. But the man who stood in front of me now was different. He was tired, angry, quick to lash out. And I did not know how much longer I could wait for him to become the person I believed he could be. Later that day, we tried again to talk about childcare. I told you, he said, sitting at the dining table, scrolling on his phone. I will handle it. I will call my mom and figure out a schedule. But I need to know it will be consistent, I said, folding my arms. I cannot worry about last-minute changes while I am at work. You do not trust me, he said, looking up sharply. I do not trust your parents, I replied, just as sharply. He sighed and stood up. You just do not want to compromise. You want things your way. No, I said quietly. I want what is safe. I want what is calm. I want what makes sense for our son. The more I spoke, the clearer things became in my mind. I was not being stubborn. I was being protective. I was not trying to control everything. I was trying to create a steady life for our baby, something I never had growing up. My own mother had worked 2 jobs when I was little. I remembered coming home to different babysitters, sometimes relatives, sometimes neighbors. I remembered the feeling of not knowing what each day would look like. I had promised myself that if I ever had children, I would give them more security than that. That was why daycare made sense to me. It was not just about convenience, it was about structure, about being sure, about peace of mind. But explaining that to Adam felt impossible. He kept talking about money, about family, about how things used to be. He did not seem to hear me when I said I could not live with more chaos. I could not carry his parents' resistance to safety rules. I could not carry his temper, his silence, and still carry our son through all of it too. I am tired, I admitted one night as we sat on the couch, both of us looking in opposite directions. Not just physically. I am tired of doing everything alone. Even when you are here, it feels like I am the only one paying attention. He looked at me then. Really looked. For a second, I saw something soften behind his eyes. But it was gone just as quickly. You are making me the villain, he said. I am not trying to, I whispered. I am just asking you to help me feel safe again. He did not answer. And I realized then that he could not give me what I was asking for. Maybe not because he did not want to, but because he did not know how. That night after he went to bed, I stood in the hallway looking at the hole he had punched in the wall months ago. We had covered it with a framed photo of the 3 of us at the hospital, the day our son was born. But I knew what was behind it. I always knew. That was the thing about trying to cover up hurt. You could place something beautiful in front of it. You could hide it from guests. You could even forget about it for a while. But the damage was still there, quietly waiting, and I was tired of covering up. I picked up my baby and held him close. His tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and I made him a quiet promise right there in the hallway. I promised to protect him, even if it meant choosing a different life than the one I thought we would have. Even if it meant walking away from the man who once bought a tiny blue hat and dreamed of bicycles. Because sometimes love meant staying. And sometimes it meant letting go, and I was still trying to figure out which one this was. A few more days passed. Our house stayed quiet, but it was not the kind of quiet that brings rest. It was the kind of quiet that builds up around the edges of your life when no one wants to be the first to speak. My husband and I moved through the same rooms, but it felt like we were on different planets. He would hold our son for a few minutes at a time. Change a diaper now and then. Say things like, I have him, while looking at his phone. And when I watched them, my husband and our baby, I felt a sharp ache in my heart. Because even though he was there, something important was still missing. The warmth, the awareness, the care. He was going through motions, but he was not with us, not in the way that mattered most. I tried again to express how I felt. One afternoon, I sat across from him in the living room while our son napped in his crib down the hall. I know I hurt you, I said. When I said it would not make a difference if you left. He looked up, surprised. Maybe he thought I would never apologize. But I was not trying to win a fight. I was trying to speak my truth. I said it because I was hurting, I continued, because I feel invisible, and I feel like I am already doing it all alone. He opened his mouth as if to respond, but I raised a hand gently. Please let me finish, I said. I need you to really hear me. He nodded and stayed quiet. I wake up with him. I feed him. I plan the appointments. I read the guidelines. I do the cleaning and the organizing and the mental gymnastics it takes to remember everything. And still somehow I feel like I have to explain myself every time I say I want something done a certain way, especially when it comes to his safety. I paused, trying not to cry. I was so tired of crying. I wanted my voice to be strong and steady. I do not hate your parents, I said, but I do not feel safe leaving our baby with them. Not for full days. Not when they will not respect how we want to raise him. And if that makes me the bad guy in their eyes, then I am okay with that. But I will not be sorry for protecting our child. He sat there, his hands clasped tightly between his knees. He looked down. And I do not want to argue every time I say no to something, I added. I do not want to be punished with silence or fear. That is not love. That is control. He rubbed his face and let out a long breath. I know, he said finally. I know I have messed up, and I know I keep saying I will change. But you do not, I whispered. That was the truth we could no longer avoid. You say you will do better, I said. And maybe you mean it in the moment. But something always happens. And I have to clean it up, physically, emotionally, all of it. You punch walls, you break things, you disappear. And then I have to keep everything together for our baby like nothing happened. He closed his eyes. I am sorry. I know, I said gently. But sorry is not enough anymore. The words sat between us like folded paper. Simple, but sharp. He looked at me then. And for the first time in a long time, he looked like he understood what was truly at stake. I love our son, he said. I want to be there for him. Then show him how to love with patience, I said. Show him what strength looks like. Not fists, not threats, but showing up day after day with care and calm. We did not finish the conversation that night, but something had shifted. In the days that followed, Adam did try, at least in small ways. He picked up our son without being asked. He offered to make a few calls to tour daycare centers. He even sat beside me once while I read through safety guidelines, nodding along quietly instead of rolling his eyes. It was not everything, but it was something. Still, a deep part of me knew I could not rely on hope alone. Because love is not supposed to hurt like this. It is not supposed to leave you wondering whether today will be peaceful or explosive. It is not supposed to leave you walking on eggshells in your own home. I started looking into options, not because I wanted to leave, but because I needed to be prepared if things did not get better. I called a friend. I asked about flexible work hours. I looked up lawyers quietly in the night while the baby slept beside me. And in the middle of all this, my baby smiled for the first time. A real smile, not just a sleepy twitch. He looked up at me one morning, right after a feeding, and smiled wide with his whole face. It broke me, and healed me all at once, because in that smile, I saw who I was doing all this for. Not just him, but me too. I deserved to feel safe. I deserved to be heard. I deserved a life where love did not come wrapped in fear. I still do not know what the future holds. I do not know if Adam will truly change, or if we are already at the edge of the road. But I do know that I will not let anger and chaos be the background noise of my child's life. I will build something steady for him, even if I have to build it alone.